Hello and welcome to a brand new series of videos that I will hopefully stick with posting on my channel. I decided I wanted to give my opinion on every episode of each show I review, as the most frequent questions I get tend to be my opinions on individual episodes. I was considering doing full videos for each episode of every show, but when a show like The Simpsons has over 600, I know I'd find it tedious to work on, and it'd probably be tedious to watch, because my opinion would overlap so much. I mostly just didn't want my channel clogged up with reviews. At the end of the video I'll be giving my thoughts on the season as a whole too. As for a rating system for the series, I'm going to be going with a 1 to 7 system. Well, sort of. The numbering is just an easy way to work out a mean score for the overall season, so the actual ratings won't be numbers. So 1 is that I hate the episode, 2 is that I really dislike the episode, 3 is that I dislike the episode, 4 is that I think the episode is mediocre, 5 is that I like the episode, 6 is that I really like the episode, and 7 is that I love the episode. The numbers are just there for me to work out a mean score for the season so that I can then round up or down to the nearest number. Anyway, with that really long opening out of the way, let's start this new video series with reviewing South Park Season 1.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Encampment gets an anal probe. Cartman thinks he was probed by aliens, and the town of South Park has some weird alien stuff going on. Cartman gets an anal probe was an interesting episode to rewatch. The voices are really different, especially Cartman. The worst part of the episode is definitely the animation. I appreciate the effort that was put in to make this show possible, but just because something has a ton of effort put into it, unfortunately doesn't make it age well. The voice acting isn't the best either, as I don't think when the characters emote they are convincing. It was interesting seeing characters like Miss Crabtree, Mr. Hart and Chef, plus getting some moments from Barbra. The story I feel is pretty well paced, although I feel like we should have had a bit more of a mystery element about whether or not the aliens were real. The episode is pretty funny though. I loved the mocking of Cartman, the cow hypnosis, and my favourite moment of Mr. Hat yelling at Kyle. Overall, I feel like this episode is mediocre. The animation has aged poorly at best, but has some charm, and the acting isn't great, which just takes me out of certain moments, which is the biggest holdback for the episode. But it's also pretty funny.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Volcano has Jimbo and Ned taking the boys hunting. It was interesting seeing Jimbo and Ned be important to the show, though they pretty much disappear from the series within a few seasons. I love Jimbo and Ned using the "it's coming right for us" line as an excuse to kill whatever they want.
It's coming right for us!
It was quite weird seeing Randy not be funny and not have eyebrows. I like how random Scuzzlebutt was. I loved the way you're supposed to protect yourself from lava. Duck and cover. The best parts of the episode were just Jimbo and Ned killing whatever they came across. I think that overall, this episode is mediocre, as it has the same issues the first episode has.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
In Weight Gain 4000, Cartman tries to get buff but fails to exercise or eat properly, and Mr. Garrison tries to assassinate Kathy Lee Gifford. I like how much Mr. Garrison is used in this season. It's weird how throughout the seasons they keep adding twists to his character. I love the fact that Cartman thinks he's getting buff when really by the end of the episode, he's shaped like a fried egg. Take the outline of him. That's the shape. There were quite a lot of good moments in this episode. I liked that Cartman thinks that rainbows are things that crawl up your leg. Barbra giving Garrison a good view of Kathy, sure. And Cartman calling dolphins dumb because they get caught in nets. Those were probably my favourite individual moments, but there are more great ones in this episode too. The very best part of the episode though, and it's the character that needs to make a comeback, Mr. Hat. He's pretty damn funny for what I consider a weak season of this show. Possibly the weakest.
That'll be wonderful, won't it, Mr. Hat?
Kill her! Mr. Hat!
But we'll only truly know my opinion after I review every season. Now I know that I keep mentioning the animation, but it hurt this episode in a few places. Basically any scene with Maya McDaniels was awkward to watch. She doesn't turn when looking at other characters, and that last joke with her and the mic was so freaking predictable because of the animation, and it wasn't one of those predictable but still funny anyway jokes.
I'll be stuck in this podunk town forever with all these stupid, hick, redneck, jobless, truck-driving idiots!
Mayor, the mic is on.
And much like the animation, Cartman's voice made his funny moments less funny than they would be for me if he had his modern voice, with the one possible exception being that great whiny scene he had. It is a weak one, but I think I like this episode. Yeah, overall, I just about liked this episode.
So come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride has Stan discovering that his dog Sparky is gay. Also, Sparky is voiced by George Clooney. He brings his A game here. There's also a B plot with Jimbo and Ned betting on Stan's football team winning a game, but planting a bomb in preparation for them losing. I like the ideas behind both, but the main takes too long to get to Big Gay Al, which is the interesting part of that side of the episode. Plus the B plot, while funny, is far too reliant on that one high-pitched joke. I know they mostly talk about Stan's dog being gay, but that doesn't really matter because Stan's dog is a rapist. Yeah, I know Sparky's a dog. Clyde's voice hurt to hear in this since it sounds nothing like his current voice.
Oh my god, what is he doing to my dog?
Also, Bill and Fozzie are here. They're one note and not really funny, unless it's a future episode, which I'm sure I'll mention when I get up to it. Jesus also makes his first appearance in a decent, but a brief scene. I like Cartman saying he's doing something to his ass. I also love how self-hating Mr. Garrison is at this point about being gay.
Gay people? Well, gay people are evil. Evil right down to their cold black hearts.
Which is a joke I've always loved about his character. I also find it kind of funny that they don't even try to make buildings look big enough compared to their interior. My favourite thing is the definitely not PC announcer saying random offensive stuff.
Well, I haven't seen a beating like that since Rodney King.
The jokes that I thought were completely unfunny were the ones between Chef and Pip. They just weren't funny to me, and I think it was due to the timing. Timing in comedy is everything. It's weird to think when looking back at this episode that this was about the limit of what South Park could get away with at the time. Like Trey says in the 6 Days to Air documentary, this season is like Yo Gabba Gabba in comparison to, let's say, The China Problem or even Follow That Egg, which is also about being gay. Despite me talking about jokes that I liked, the plots weren't that interesting to me. I get that the main plot was controversial and maybe even progressive for its time, but if it came out now, nobody would care. I believe TV shows, especially ones where characters rarely age, have to hold up when I review it. I think this episode is mediocre. It does a decent amount right and a decent amount wrong, and it isn't an episode that I plan to go back to anytime soon. The ones I'll rewatch soon, other than for review purposes, will be the really likes or loves. The jokes for me held this up from being a bad episode.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
In An Elephant Makes Love to a Pig, the plot mostly involves Stan getting beat up by his sister Shelley, and the boy is trying to breed an elephant with a pig. Honestly, this is a pretty forgettable episode. All I can ever remember from this one is Chef singing, and Mephisto singing, and Mephisto and his butt obsession, plus that freakish Stan thing.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Death revolves around Stan's grandpa wanting to die on his 102nd birthday, and him trying to get Stan to do it. This episode also gives us the first instance of Sheila's complete and utter hatred of Terrence and Philip. I've always thought that Stan's grandpa was really underappreciated as a character. Him calling Stan Billy is a decent recurring joke, and I really liked the ending with the grandpa's grandpa calling him Billy. I enjoyed watching Stan's grandpa try to get Stan to kill him. It isn't just him wanting him to do it, but rather the fact that he thinks Stan is weak for not wanting to do it. I really like Stan's grandpa trying to piss off Cartman, so Cartman ends up killing him.
And then I dug up your great-grandma's skeleton and had my way with her, too.
Hey!
Choice piece of ass, your great-grandma.
You piece of crap! I'll kill you!
That's the spirit, Tubby.
I also really liked the recurring joke of not touching that with a insert length here Paul joke, and the network ad.
You. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If there are any questions, you may direct them to that brick wall over there.
I appreciate South Park saying, don't blame the freaking show if your kids turn out to be shitty people. And the violence in real life is okay as long as it's stop vulgar language dumb argument getting destroyed. I thought the recurring it's nothing but potty humour joke, where a character craps and the show takes the piss out of itself, could have been handled better, in a more progressively ridiculous way. Best moment for me, without a doubt, was Cartman telling his mother, it's fine to watch Terrence and Philip. It's just a great moment showing just how weak Miss Cartman is. In terms of my overall opinion on this episode, it's just more of the same really. Some decent jokes with the subject they tackle, but weakish voice acting, animation, and not being overly impressive really in any way, makes me say, once again, I think this episode is mediocre.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Now this is the kind of thing I like to see for a story. This took an existing thing in the universe, Kenny constantly being killed, and used that thing mostly used for jokes in other episodes as a way to pave a plot. The plot is more interesting than normal, even if the ending is a bit of a cop-out with the kill the original zombie thing. I also didn't like how everyone turned back to normal, even though they didn't fully kill Zombie Kenny. I am glad the kids got to slaughter some zombies though. I enjoyed the zombie infection being mistaken for pink eye.
Let's form a line. I've got enough topical cream for everybody.
I liked Cartman dressing up as Hitler but being forced to change his costume and dress up as a ghost. Yeah. Ghost. One of my favourite jokes was just the recurring Cartman's mom's a slut joke. My favourite moment though was definitely Cartman crying over Kenny and then just quickly stopping.
Well, let's get home, start eating that candy.
I know that some people will appreciate the joke of almost all of the students wearing the same costume. Unfortunately, I didn't. It took away one of my favourite things about Halloween episodes, and that's seeing characters in costumes and how it fits with their personality. I still find Wendy's voice awkward to listen to since she actually sounds like a child here. I think it's mediocre because of a few good jokes, despite the other stuff that hinders it.
Come on down south, I can meet some friends, man.
In Starvin Marvin, the boys adopt Starvin Marvin just so they can get a sports watch. But the kid actually shows up at their door. Meanwhile, turkeys are out for blood. Meanwhile, again, the town does a canned food sports drive. Best moment, hands down, is Cartman eating Marvin's food. The fact that the episode is called Starvin Marvin really adds to the cruelty and hilarity of that joke for me. That's easily one of the best moments from all of season 1. I really liked Cartman getting mistaken for Marvin by the Red Cross. It's just so dumb it's great. I liked the reveal of where all of the money was going to in Africa, plus Cartman's whining will continue to be one of the highlights of the earlier seasons. And the last joke that truly stands out for me is the continued mention of Kenny's family being poor. It does stuff with its concepts but doesn't meet the full potential of them. It has bits of bad and bits of good and it's mediocre.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Mr. Hankey the Christmas Pooh has Kyle struggling to be Jewish at Christmas time, plus he has to try to make people believe in Mr. Hankey. I think it's safe to say that this is one of the most iconic South Park episodes. It has Mr. Hankey, one of the most well-known South Park characters, and the episode has the original version of Kyle's mum's a bitch. Once again, Mr. Garrison is by far the best part of this season, just insulting the kids and everyone at whatever opportunity he gets.
You need to hold the baby by the legs, not by the head. What kind of sick weirdo are you?
Sorry.
He may not be as over the top as he gets in the future, but he's still one of the best characters early on. The Kyle's Mom song is decent, even though the movie version is so much better than the original. I also like the offense detector things, and I actually like how Kenny actually lives for once. Mr. Hankey is a bit of a dick in this episode, since he doesn't just tell people he's real. I didn't like the live action Mr. Hankey thing. Only one of the South Park commercials landed for me, and it's Alabama Man. Random note, he is a white version of Token. I'll sound like a broken record as my grandma says. They may introduce an iconic character, but an iconic character doesn't make the episode itself great. I think the episode is mediocre.
Come on down south, I can meet some friends, man.
In Damien, it's Cartman's birthday. Meanwhile, Damien, Satan's son, is in charge of finding Jesus. Jesus finds him instead. Satan and Jesus then challenge each other to a boxing match, but the fight is on Cartman's birthday, causing him to get really pissed off. I like the twist of Satan betting on Jesus winning and throwing the match for money. Mr. Garrison has the funniest moment, even if it is just a small one, him going to Chef for protection. What I don't like? Damien's voice. I don't like Damien's voice. It isn't as annoying as the American Dad Antichrist, but that had charm with how irritating it was. Plus, he was barely used in Rapture's Delight, so it never made me want to rip my hair out. Damien's voice is really irritating for me though, because nobody really brings it up and he talks a lot. I might as well mention it here since I haven't really mentioned it much. Chef gets another song, and I know they're well liked, but all of Chef's songs are so similar sounding to me, causing me to not really care about any of them. Here, Pip is clearly the Butters before Butters became the buttery Butters we know and love today. Damien is interesting. Him being the son of Satan, you'd probably expect him to show up a bit more. But really, if you think about it, Satan himself barely shows up in this show. Yeah, a little underused if you ask me. Which nobody did, but this isn't exactly a live video, so, you know, it's there. Anyway, mediocre episode.
Come on down south, I can meet some friends, man.
In Tom's Rhinoplasty, the boys have a crush on the new substitute teacher, but it makes Wendy jealous. Meanwhile, Mr. Garrison gets a nose job. I always remember the Mr. Garrison David Hasselhoff nose story, but I barely remembered anything about the other plot. It is weird how much they used Mr. Garrison in this first season. Mr. Garrison has always been one of my favourite characters from this show, long before they did any of the Donald Trump stuff. I like the dumb Garrison logic behind telling the school he has herpes because he'd be embarrassed about telling them about cosmetic surgery. Cartman saying he'd get the substitute a vacuum because chicks love vacuums, and Cartman licking a carpet to become a lesbian is typical Cartman. While I'm not a massive fan of his songs, Chef does have one of his best songs here. I know I've mentioned before that I don't like that Wendy has a voice that makes her sound like an actual little girl, but it does make her trying to intimidate Miss Ellen funnier. This episode seems to improve some of the stuff that I usually have problems with. That also goes for the celebrity face thing. I'm not a fan of the live action faces they sometimes use, but out of all of the times they've done it, this one is by far my favourite, and it actually helps the joke. Wendy's constant screaming in this episode is annoying though, and Mr. Garrison's side is extremely one note. Also, the way to get Miss Ellen out of being a teacher was just dumb, and to me, I don't think it fits Wendy's character at all. Overall, this episode is mediocre.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
In Mecha Streisand, Kyle discovers a triangle? But out of all people, Barbra Streisand wants it. I like the recurring joke of the boys being physically hurt by her singing, characters being outright vicious calling her a bitch.
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
Who? What a bitch!
And I kind of like Mecha Streisand, even though I think it's dumb. A thing that I think is better in the episode 201. I get that the episode is supposed to be somewhat a parody of Godzilla, but I mean, it's dumb and random, even by South Park standards. My favourite moment is just Sheila getting an autograph from Mecha Streisand. Hey, the characters may hate her, but at least she stops causing destruction for a moment to give a fan an autograph. Trey and Matt are really open about Barbra Streisand being their least favourite celebrity, so it makes sense that she is the first celebrity to get the full-on South Park episode treatment. Regardless of your feelings towards this episode, I think it'd be hard to argue that this didn't pave the path for future episodes that have a large focus on mocking celebrities. Like that time they mocked a gay fish. Sure, they'd mocked celebrities before this, but they weren't the focus for the whole episode. Other than how viciously insulting they are towards Barbara, the episode doesn't do that much to stand out. The animation kind of limits how ridiculous Mecha Streisand can be, which is part of the reason I prefer her return. I think that this episode, and I'd hold on to something before hearing this, is once again mediocre.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
This is one of the first South Park episodes that I can recall watching. The pilot, this, and Chicken Lover, plus the movie if you want to count it. Which one is best? Wait, I guess, but I imagine I share the popular opinion here. In this episode, Cartman's trying to figure out who his dad is. This episode starts much better than usual, playing with the usual joke with Miss Crabtree, takes the usual twist, and then proceeds to twist that.
What did you say?
I said, we're not getting on, you fat, ugly bitch.
Oh, all right then.
Whoa, dude! I always wondered if that would work.
I will say the season 2 continuation of the story is somewhat disappointing with the resolution, but that gets more completed in the episodes 200 and 201. Simply having a mystery element is a nice change of pace, and this episode feels like Trey and Matt realising what Cartman's character is. The mystery element is much better in the season 2 continuation of the story, or at least I think so. I find it kind of funny that the boys help out Cartman for once, something they definitely wouldn't do now. He becomes so much more malicious just a few seasons down the line. We get Eric doing the voices for his stuffed animals, which I think is better in 1%, but that episode is devoted to it. I like Cartman dressing up as a Native American because he thinks he can play the race card after finding out that his dad could possibly be a Native American, and I obviously feel the same about him being black. Mr. Garrison has my favourite moments in this episode, once again. He has his disappointed moment with Ms. Cartman and the reveal that Cartman's mom is a slut.
Yeah, when two women are involved.
Damn, damn, damn! Oh well, I guess it'll just have to be you and me, Miss Cartman.
When Cartman's trying to figure out who his dad is, it is decent, but a bit repetitive. Even though we've already seen him, Mr. Mackey's voice is just wrong here. It doesn't feel right.
Then I can study him psychologically, find out what's wrong, okay?
There's a B-plot with mostly Stan and Kyle trying to make a funny video, but it's pretty unmemorable. The most memorable bit from it is when it connects to Cartman. In parts, this episode seems better than every other episode from the season. However, the people that Cartman's mom slept with aren't that funny other than Garrison. In this episode, the mystery element also gets better in the season 2 second part. Can't say premiere, cannot say premiere. This is unfortunately, despite highlights, mediocre. Overall, this is a mediocre season of South Park. That's not a big problem though, because I knew when going back through this season that I wouldn't love it. It will probably feel this way for a couple more seasons too, so get used to, I don't know, averageness I guess. There are some highlights, but as a whole, the season feels like Troy and Matt weren't really sure what they were doing at first. I'm obviously glad it wasn't all bad, but almost every episode being just about mediocre made this a little difficult to get through. And unfortunately, it made my thoughts cross over quite a bit. Be sure to give me your opinions in the comments about what you think of these episodes and season as a whole, and even this new type of video series I'm doing. I'll always enjoy discussing stuff with commenters, well, unless someone just writes something along the lines of, "Fuck you," because how is that supposed to help anyone? So please let me know how I can improve this new video series. I'm always at least going to be open to changing stuff, and I look forward to discussing what I consider one of my favourite shows, weakest seasons, with you guys. Until next time, bye I guess.